Thank you so much for joining us on What's Your Story Africa podcast. My name is Catherine Mwangi. Today we have the privilege of speaking with somebody from all the way in Belgium. So he has a heart for Africa. He does a lot in and for this continent, and that forms the subject matter of our conversation today. So thank you for tuning in to our YouTube channel, making the appointment for this week's conversation because it's all about Africa. Our pillars remain health, economy, education, and agriculture. And there's some exciting news that we want to share with our guest today. I will introduce him. His name is Dr. Vincenzo Lorusso. He's a policy officer, EU Africa Cooperation on Science, Technology, and Innovation, EU chair for EU Innovation Agenda Working Group, and European Commission DG Research and Innovation. Wow, that's a long title, but we'll get to break that down. Dr. Vincenzo, I am so honored you're here. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Catherine, and thank you very much for having me. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Well, it is as well for us on this podcast. So thank you for making the time. Let's get to it. Your role, what exactly is your role? If you could just give us clarity on what you do, because I see there's lots of work that you do in Africa for Africa. So enlighten and expand our knowledge on that.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much for the question. I will try and do my best to make this as intelligible as I can. So I work at the European Commission, indeed in the DG that deals with research and innovation, and particularly in the Directorate, in the unit that deals with the cooperation between Africa and Europe on science, technology, and innovation. As part of this endeavor, I have the honor and the pleasure to cooperate with the African Union on what are the joint priorities of this cooperation on science, technology, and innovation. You mentioned a few of them, if not all of them, as referring to the topics of What's Your Story Africa, which is your beautiful, if I may say, podcast. These are public health, green transition, which includes food security and nutrition security, and climate change and sustainable energy. Then the cross-cutting areas of innovation and technology, and capacities for science, which is very much linked, as the name would tell you, to capacity building. So this is something that has been done at multilateral level, involving both the European Commission on one hand and the African Union Commission on the other, so Brussels and Addis in connection. But of course, at the same time, also all the other AU, African Union, and European Union member states, of course, because we are indeed representing unions and we need to be accountable and representative indeed. And of course, this is a big chunk of my work, which then is also articulated into the bilateral cooperation, which indeed entails the cooperation between the European Union and three African countries that are very crucial in terms of importance on science, technology, and innovation. These are, in alphabetic order, Nigeria, Rwanda, and South Africa. And so we're working also in the space with these countries to make sure we are, all in all, contributing to a more impactful cooperation, making sure that the cooperation in research in science, technology, and innovation translates into more tangible positive impact and socioeconomic development in both Africa and Europe. To conclude, we have a policy, overarching joint policy, which provides for the framework for our cooperation to occur in a way that is indeed agreed upon by the political masters, by my ministers of science and technology innovation of the two unions. And this is the so-called African Union, European Union Innovation Agenda. It was politically adopted in July 2023 and is now undergoing implementation for 10 years from the adoption, which means from 2023 until the end of 2033.
That's wonderful. So what are some of the milestones you hope to achieve, or the objective, the overarching objective of the EU? Which one comes first? Because I want to be politically correct.
AU, by all means.
Okay. So what is the objective? So 10 years. And you started it was founded in 2023 up until now 2033, for which you intend to achieve what?
Yes, thank you, Catherine, for this very important question. In a nutshell, I would say translate the research and innovation efforts that have been undertaken cooperatively between the two unions, and of course, not just between Africa and Europe, also entailing cooperation within Africa and cooperation within Europe, research institutions, universities, startups, SMEs, and to make sure we contribute as tangibly as possible into their translation into more products, services, businesses, and job opportunities in both Africa and Europe across the priority areas that I mentioned earlier on. So, public health, green transition, food security and agriculture, climate change and sustainable energy, industrial innovation and technology, of course, including also digital, and capacity building and education. So, of course, in innovation and technology, I'm also referring to culture, creative industries, and fashion with that, so to say. We need to find ways to, by doing so, provide opportunities to the youth. Of course, we know how youth is essential in the African continent, where the demographic are quite clear on that, and we need to make sure we are politically and financially providing the instruments that facilitate this process of translation. So more translation from research into tangible innovations to actual citizens.
I like that. I like that. It does sound like the kind of thing or the kind of vision that by the time you're getting to year 10 or even year 7, the youth in Africa will look back and say, yes, that was worthwhile. That elevated our lives, our families. We're in a better place, isn't it?
Yes, and of course, it's important. You mentioned year 7, and of course, I like that choice because indeed it means towards the end of the 10-year implementation timeframe of this joint policy agenda. It is also important to keep monitoring evaluation the outcome and the outputs of it by year 20, by year 25, because indeed we need to make sure that we are concerned and we are walking the talk by doing that about an important aspect that I'm sure you hear multiple times in your podcast, which is sustainability. What are we doing to ensure that once the policy framework turns into another, indeed there's a sustainability component with that in a way that we're not reinventing the wheel every time we try and launch a new initiative.
Mm-hmm. So 2023, 2024, 2025, let's segue to the innovation fair
Right,
is coming up in October. What,
correct.
first of all, what was the first innovation fair like? That's one part of the question. And perhaps before that question is what initiated this vision? Why have an innovation fair in the first place?
Right, beautiful question. Thank you indeed. You see, for this African Union, European Union innovation agenda to come reality, we really realized jointly at political level the need for working in a cross-sectoral, multi-sectoral, and interdisciplinary manner. It cannot just be realized. This agenda cannot be implemented only through instruments that are coming from the ivory tower of the policymakers. We need everybody's contribution there, involving also the private sector that is essential, as you know very well, in creating jobs and opportunity, also for youth, right? And by private sector, not only do I mean the startups, these small and micro enterprises, which, as you know, are at least 80 to 90% of the private sector in the African continent. We also want to engage, and we are also engaging the big corporations, the multinationals, that not only are essential in job creation, they're also essential in bringing the innovations to the marketplace, because in fact, they have the facilities and a lot of the times that they can take the risks to actually venture in more risky R&D undertakings, if I could say that. And I do not mean to become over technical. We also need to engage civil society organizations and the citizens themselves. So from this realization, we realize that if we want to be successful in the implementation of this EU innovation agenda, and even before we started with implementation, while we were still discussing a draft version of this agenda, we thought that we had to do this with the communities. And therefore, we could not just think of doing this through here and there consultations, but we had to do it as part of what we call the stakeholder dialogue process. So the stakeholder dialogue around the conceptualization of this EU innovation agenda started in the year 2022. Well, actually took place throughout the year 2022. We published in February of that year during the week of the sixth Europe's Africa Summit that took place in Brussels. We published the draft version of this EU Innovation Agenda, and we make sure this will be the subject of an extensive public consultation to really benefit from the viewpoints, the feedback, the input coming from all citizens, stakeholder organizations, just mentioned them. They were actually, we tried our best to consult them and to have the viewpoints. And as a culmination of this dialogue, we thought we would gather in Nairobi and online in November 2022. And we indeed tried the first pilot version of the EU Innovation Fair, which, to say it hopefully as concisely as possible, it was really a pilot experience where we brought on stage to pitch to the audience innovators, startups, entrepreneurs who would really showcase the innovative solutions in their fields, in public health, in green transition, in food security, in innovation and technology, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, the pitches were also done by business support organizations. They were indeed incubating these startups that presented. And this was done to an audience of public and private investors, potential collaborators, and so on and so forth. There was a first pitching part that took place indeed on a stage where one after the other, the entrepreneurs were indeed presenting in 3 minutes their solutions. And then this was really subsequently accompanied by an actual fair, the exhibition space, where the solutions were showcased either through 3D demonstrations or through videos and posters and so on and so forth. And the matchmaking could happen. So anybody interested in those transformative solutions could then engage with the respective entrepreneurs and innovators. And from there, we decided then to continue running such events and to engage nobody less than the community we had gathered in Nairobi to make this become bigger and bigger, again, in the spirit of a collective endeavor and engagement.
Okay. So this is year number 3?
Yes.
For
entering.
Yes, year number 3, third year now, this year. So as with numbers, the third, as the first, you're okay, that was nice. The second, oh wow, that was not so bad. That's pretty good. The third should be like, wow, that was amazing. So life is in threes, or what do they say? So what can be expected at this year's innovation fair? Before we get to what are you looking for, what is exactly innovators, entrepreneurs listening or watching to this, what should they look for? But also from a planner's perspective, you're the custodians of this vision. What is expected? Like, because it's the third one, so it has to like boom, like it has to be, yeah.
Right. So it's a very important question. Thank you, Catherine. And I will try and share the vision and the aspiration, keeping in mind that indeed this is not a one-way process. This is a two-way process, at least two-way, in the sense that there's the proposals, the organizers, and then of course we expect to have participation and contribution.
Yeah.
The running title of this third edition of the Innovation Fair is Enabling That Step Forwards, in the sense that what we want to do for those who will be pitching on stage, approximately 40 startups, business support organizations, entrepreneurs in the broader sense, we want them to leave that fair, which will run as a whole day event, or happening on the 23rd of October in Brussels and online, but the pitches will be all in Brussels. Well, we want them to leave that fair with concrete and tangible collaboration opportunities. By collaboration opportunities, I mean potential investment secured, so support for their transformative solutions to make a step forward and not being alone in that. So sharing the risks and benefiting from support and facilitation to make that step forward. Whether that step forward brings their solutions already to the marketplace and to the society, fantastic. But it can also maybe a baby step that makes them a little bit closer to the marketplace and society, but only one way forward, please. And so we want them to also potentially engage with collaborators, potential peers that indeed may be providing them with some research and development collaboration tools that somehow can also make them, enable them to really leap towards, again, one step closer to the marketplace and the indeed societal uptake, as we say. By all means, we also want this to be an edifying and very useful experience to those who will be following online. And indeed, we'll be setting up a platform according to which also those who will be following online, they want to then book a matchmaking meeting with those who will be pitching, they can do so for the following years in the aftermath, in the wake of the innovation fair. And allow me to conclude by saying that with a strong ambition,
Yeah.
like this wasn't strong enough, this time we are doing this in a more global fashion. Not only are we including the Africa Europe cooperation and we are showcasing the vibrancy of this cooperation, but we're also doing this by merging the Africa Europe cooperation with the cooperation between Europe and the Mediterranean region, so including Northern Africa, which is of course already included in the African Union, European Union cooperation, but also the Near and Middle East. Therefore, by enlarging the geographical scope of this cooperation, we are expecting to leverage more synergies. Hopefully, we will talk again after the event for me to provide you with some figures to demonstrate that.
That's awesome. So, the successes of the first two, um, could you give us something tangible? Like, what are some of the success stories that emerged from the first and the second innovation fair?
Wow, fantastic, and a very, very important question. I'll give you examples as they come to my mind,
Yes.
if you allow me to. For instance,
Mhm.
because indeed I highlighted this two-way process. So, indeed, the call for expression of interest is not only to African entrepreneurs, for example, who wish to venture in the European market, for example, but also for European entrepreneurs who want to partner with their African counterparts or with the counterparts from the Mediterranean. So, for example, a startup in the biotech, in the public health area, in the global health space from Europe, thanks to the engagements in sub-Saharan Africa, is now establishing contacts with some regulatory agencies in some key sub-Saharan African countries, where indeed some of the testing of their innovative diagnostic kit that can allow for early detection of prostatic cancer, an issue, of course, that is of major importance globally, really, in a way that the kit could be used everywhere, including also remote and rural settings, well, thanks to the facilitation and thanks to the exposure and the visibility that the innovation fairs are providing them. Now they're moving forward in those interactions, to give a practical example. And the same thing could be indeed used as an example that of startups coming from the sub-Saharan African space, for example, including from Kenya. I'll give you an example of a media company based in southern coastal Kenya, in Mombasa. Indeed, they are established through their exposure to the provided by the Innovation Fair. They're now having more collaborations with European counterparts in a way that indeed this is part of an ongoing process. So one opportunity leads to another, and so on and so forth. Of course, it's very important. We need to measure and quantify the opportunities that we provide. And so I'll try and be as quantitative as possible. For example, there was one startup that is based between Berlin and Nairobi, working in the green fintech space. They were able to secure an investment of several hundreds of thousands of dollars, I believe of the order of $200,000, thanks to an engagement that they had with an investor at the Innovation Fair in Nairobi on the first edition. So these are just a few examples that I want to provide. And of course, we need to make sure we document them all and we have them more and more as we go forward.
Yeah. Did I hear you correctly? You said the first one was in Nairobi?
Yes, in
Really?
November. Yes.
Okay. And where was the second one?
Second one was in June 2023 in Cape Town, South Africa.
Ah. So this is in Belgium.
Yes, so this time we're bringing it for the first time to Europe because also if you look at the Mediterranean European cooperation one, the first one took place in October 2024 in Cairo, in Egypt. So really, this is the first time we're doing this in Europe, and indeed we are, of course, excited about the novelty that this can bring. Of course, you can imagine that everywhere we do it, we try and showcase also do justice to the local excellences, if I could say so. For example, I've not mentioned yet the fact that, yes, these are the multilateral fairs that we've done and the one that we'll be doing this year. But last year, we had the first edition of the Nigeria EU Innovation Days in July 2024. And for example, with the event being done in Nigeria, we're of course trying to give as much space as possible to Nigeria's excellencies in the creative industries, for example. Let me mention Afrobeat and Afropop, also fashion designs and industries, and of course, how could I not mention the film industry and Nollywood with that?
Yeah.
So now in the case of Brussels, we also want to give enough space at the diaspora association and movements. And of course, not only do I refer to Afro-descendants and African diasporas in Europe, but I also referring now to diasporas from the Mediterranean basin, of course, trying to be as inclusive as we can, keeping in mind that we're coming from a European Union of 27 countries and of course, different member states. And we're trying to be as inclusive while doing the event in Brussels, Belgium.
Right. So take us through the process. So first, how do people apply? So I know you said this a while back. First, in which areas um, are you looking for people to register? And then what is the registration process? And then by when can they expect feedback from yourselves?
Right. Thank you, Catherine, for allowing me to articulate on this. There's two registration process, so to say, at the moment. Let me try and clarify this. For those who wish to pitch on their innovative solutions in the area of public health, green transition including food and nutrition security and agriculture, and I know there are many outstanding innovations coming out of Kenya and the African continent in general in that space. Also, water management is part of green transition, but also climate change and sustainable energy, industrial innovation and technology, and capacity building and education. Well, there's an opportunity to apply for a pitching slot at the fair. We will share the link through the podcast captions and resources. And the time to do so is now until Sunday, 24th August, end of the day. So you can submit your expression of interest. Allow me to say you should submit your expression of interest if you're working in this space. There's a form to be filled in. You will see that out of these requests, out of the inquiries that you will get for the form, you'll be asked to provide a 40 seconds video of why your innovation is so amazing. And allow me to clarify, what do you need? Why are you coming to pitch in Brussels? Because, Catherine, really permit me to take this space to clarify that the pitch, which in Brussels will be of 2 minutes, should not just be about how amazing, how fabulous the transformative solutions are, but also it should be made clear, what else do you need to make that step forward that we want to enable through the innovation fair, right? Otherwise, there shouldn't be a need for the startup and the entrepreneur to be there pitching. So it's a twofold kind of approach that I would like entrepreneurs to keep in mind as they approach the application. So the link and resources will be shared for the podcast captions. Bear in mind the deadline is 24th of August. The second pre-registration process that is ongoing is the one for any other attendee who wish to attend the fair, whether online or in person. And by this, I'm also referring to any stakeholder. So not only entrepreneurs and innovators that may not have a solution to pitch on this particular occasion, but who want to indeed listen to other pitches and potentially start collaborating with peers. And at the same time, importantly enough, to all investors, so public and private ones, not just from the government side and ministries and development agencies, but I'm also referring to VCs, to indeed venture capitals, corporations, and so on and so forth. The opportunity to pre-register is there, and also to civil society organizations and third parties. We call it a pre-registration because, as you can imagine, Catherine, we would like to give a really pertinent opportunities in terms of audience to those who will be pitching. So and I'm coming to the second part of your question, by early in September, to those who pre-registered to attend the event, we will be able to provide the resolute feedback on their attendance, especially those in person, because indeed we want to make sure that the innovators will be talking about their solutions to a as appropriate as possible audience, made of a balanced composition, not only geographically, but also of sectors, so to include the investors, the banks, the collaborators, potential ones, and so on and so forth. So for these, I would say both links are going to be shared, and please make sure you act definitely by the 24th of August if you want to pitch, and otherwise, if you want to attend the event, I will still say the earlier the better. Don't wait until the end of August to make your pre-registration to the Innovation Fair.
That's wonderful. So is the registration free of charge or is there a fee?
Thank you for asking this. It's absolutely free. So indeed, for the everybody can pre-register, and therefore, once the confirmation is received, register with no charge whatsoever. When it comes to those who will be selected for pitching, bear in mind that indeed logistical support will be provided depending on their needs and, of course, depending on where they're coming from. So, by logistical support, I mean sponsoring with travels and accommodation for the time in Brussels. Keeping in mind that those 40 who will be pitching, indeed, all of them will be coming in person in Brussels for a full experience.
Yeah. So 40 you're looking at, or rather your selection team is going to pick 40 um, pitches. Is that what to call them? Okay.
Yes, yes. For the startup specifically, it will be more competitive because it will be 16 out of the 40. The others will be business support organizations, and this will be the part two of the pitches. And the part three of the pitches will be innovative solutions stemming from projects that we've been funding and co-funding as European Union, African Union, or Union for the Mediterranean over the past decade. Indeed, because we want to understand what's the good that is coming out of those projects and what can we do to turn that good into better, and indeed to make sure that we not reinvent the wheel, but provide to that for that sustainability to which I was referring earlier on.
Okay. And out of the 40, I go back to the 40. Out of the 40, how many are, I know you don't know this now, but based on experience, past experience, how many are selected from Africa?
Wow. Well, that's a great question because it allows me to say that from the past experiences, Catherine, we've been having at least 80% of applications coming from the African continent. I am personally not surprised because indeed we witness every second in the continent the entrepreneurial dimensions, and it's actually important to put this black and white in figures. So applications coming from the African continent are usually very large. I can, because we are also monitoring in real time where we do, how are we doing with applications, and I have to say that the numbers are going indeed growing and growing, and the trend is still approximately there. Of course, this time diluted a bit by the fact that we have applications coming also from the Near Middle East. But yes, European applications will come too. In any case, what I can also tell when it comes to the beautiful African continent is that the average quality is really, really great. And of course, this creates quite some, makes our lives of our selection team more difficult. But anyway, we like the difficulty. To conclude, allow me to say that even those entities that we may not be able to select because of the limited slots available, we shall try and find ways to include them in the next steps as we move forward, indeed, because indeed we're trying to do the best we can in a way that we can do justice to the vibrancy of the ecosystems, really.
Okay. So, criteria, a 2-minute video telling us what and why of, activities you're submitting. Am I putting that right, or am I just killing it?
Yes, you are. For the application form, it will be shorter than 2 minutes. It will be 40 seconds. And then there's a form with a lot of text, quite some text to be filled in, basically describing the company's vision, describing the successes, describing also what is needed. 40 seconds will be a mini pitch. Once the startup, the SME is selected to come to Brussels, then the actual pitch there will be of 2 minutes, yes. And, from past experiences, we started with 3 minutes in Nairobi and then we moved to 2 minutes in Cape Town. I mean, you are the master in this space. Less is more, isn't it? If you know what to say and you know
Yeah.
how to say, even 5 seconds may be enough.
Ha.
Maybe.
Okay. And a recap of the spaces, the industries, the areas in which, you're expecting pitches. So what are the industries?
So they are public health, and public health, please read it also as global health. So innovations in biotechnologies, infectious diseases, non-communicable diseases, diagnostics, primary healthcare systems, really sky's the limit. So there's no specific limitation within the space of public health. Again, I can only invite everybody also to familiarize with the text of the EU Innovation Agenda if you want to have more direction of what are the objectives of this agenda. But again, these areas that I mentioned are all included in the macro area of public health for global health. Then number two, green transition. And with that, I would like to include food and nutrition security and sustainable agriculture on one hand, and then climate change and sustainable or renewable energy on the other. Then the third area would be very cross-cutting, industrial innovation and technology. So this also includes a digital component. And, this could be innovation and technology to any application. So indeed, multiple choices will also be allowed when an innovator is applying to the form and is asked, to what priority area of our corporation does your innovation really belong. And then the fourth area is the one of capacities for science. That's the title we gave it, and it refers to essentially capacity building, education, research systems, and innovation ecosystem strengthening. So, for example, support that is provided to innovation systems or a digital tool that is used for educational purposes. This is the area for which I would suggest ticking the box of capacities for science. Think indeed of capacity building and educational elements and training with that.
And why are you leaving out creative arts?
Yes, so creative arts is really embedded essentially in the innovation and technology and capacities for science. So really, thank you for bringing this up, Catherine. I've indeed been in touch also with some of the startups in these ecosystems. So indeed, do consider opportunities for ticking the boxes of innovation and technology and capacities for science, for fine arts, creative industries and culture. So far, we've been linking it mostly to capacities for science, but indeed, if there are innovative tools that are being used for scaling up production of certain services, also consider that other area.
And the theme is enabling that step forward. Mm.
Yes, indeed, because we really want to provide for enabling opportunities. So we want the innovators, the business support organizations, the researchers, the entrepreneurs who will be pitching in Brussels to leave that experience with having secured opportunities that allow them to really make it to the next step, closer to the marketplace and closer to end users. Of course, we shall use ways to monitor and evaluate this and learn as we move forward. So indeed, that's why I was jokingly referring to talking again to really measure what success stories we've been able to secure thanks to to this event. And this is also why the hashtags used for this event were indeed not a regular event and making it possible.
Making it possible. So you're basically giving innovators wings to fly to the next step, to the next cloud, so to speak.
Yes,
Okay,
hopefully so.
hopefully. Okay, so and as you wind up, talk to us about your, and I know perhaps we can have a longer conversation on this, but in your free time, I know Africa is close to your heart. Based on what I have seen you post on your social media platforms, I do investigate before I speak to my guests.
Of course, you need to do your intelligence.
And I know Africa is very close to your heart, and you have gifts and talents and collaborations with quite a number of Africans over a couple of years in different countries in Africa. I just saw your eyes lit up when you started speaking about Nigeria. So, could you tell us why Africa is so close?
Wow. I mean, you said it. This may require a complete separate episode, if I can say that.
Yeah.
I mean, for as much as I can tell,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think there's so much um, that is to be done in the continent, and I have to say that my interest in working with and in the continent
Yeah.
really uh, stems from my childhood, indeed through music, perhaps, and this is how I got initially close to the continent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a music person. In my spare time, I've been a rapper and a singer, although I started as a drum player, to be honest. I've been a rapper and a singer for the past 20 plus years. And I had the privilege to work in Nigeria during my PhD days, so more than a decade ago, 15 years ago by now. And yeah, very soon by delving into Nigerian literature, and of course I started Chinua Achebe, of course. And I very soon started exploring and developing really a strong interest for Nigerian pidgin, which of course has a literary component to that. And by now, I shouldn't be telling this. I mean, I don't need to convince anybody because everybody's listening to pidgin lyrics in Afrobeat and Afropop songs. I find this extremely fascinating. As an example, Catherine, I think it's very pertinent to your podcast of an African success story going global. And I think it's very amazing, isn't it? So as somebody who fell in love with this already in the early 2010s, when P Square indeed was the thing in Jos and the rest of the country. I was based in Jos at the time. Yes, I felt and I've been feeling somehow very much involved in the story. So it really comes from a genuine interest. And yes, I guess my musical self is a way to nurture this, and certainly is a holistic interest, because indeed when we talk about music, we talk about culture, we talk about innovations, we talk about literature and fine arts, and really, I mean, ultimately it's be about humanism, if I could use these words.
Yeah. So will you be rapping at the Innovation Fair in October?
Well, I don't want to disclose this yet. It's all possible, isn't it? Because we want to make this possible. As you may have known from as I believe you know from my social media platforms, something similar happened at the Nigeria EU Innovation Days, where I had huge honor to be sharing the stage with Faith. I mean, Nigeria's rising star in Afrobeat. It was quite impressive for me, and yeah, it's in my Instagram account as an artist.
Okay. So that we shall unpack all of that in a different conversation. But at least
Yes,
for
I know.
today, we have learned, we have a glimpse into the Innovation Fair, the third edition. And it's good to know that it's, a 10-year vision. So it's not just, touch and go. And you have a 10-year,
No,
10-year vision, there's a plan, and it's for Africa.
absolutely, absolutely, and a big word of gratitude for having provided a platform to announce this and share these thoughts with the communities, Catherine. I believe that What's Your Story Africa is 100% in line with what we're trying to do in these AU innovation agendas. So allow me to somehow embrace the work that you do and put it together with initiatives that we are trying to really facilitate at continental and intercontinental level. Because indeed, I think connecting the dots is something that somehow is overlooked because there's so much going on, including also the media and the information and so on and so forth. And I think that when we do so, we realize how stronger we are. Apologies if I sound a bit obvious, how stronger we are together rather than in silos.
No, that's true. That's true. We're in the era of collaborations, hence why we are doing this. And yes, let's see what the outcomes will be.
Right, indeed. Thank you. I mean, you'll be duly informed, but I'm sure we will keep in touch and I'm sure you're going to follow this closely and
Yes,
contribute to it
yes.
like you're doing now.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Vincenzo Lorusso. I hope I have pronounced that right.
Impeccable. Thank you.
And the websites, the links to register are in our what is it called? Description box. And on our social media platforms as well. That's YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, X. We are in all of those platforms. So again, we just have that text scrolling so that you are aware and enlightened about what's happening. And we hope that you will register in those specific fields that he has mentioned and outlined. And we hope that you get to be among the 40 distilled to the 16, I think. And voila, you get what it is you're looking for. This is how we do it. And thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And thanks to all colleagues. Thank you. And please do apply for your expression of interest. Deadline is 24th of August. Don't miss this opportunity.
Goodbye, Dr. Lorusso.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Till next time.